Hello YouTube. This is a small corner, and the first thing I want to do is I just would like to wish a very happy Thanksgiving to everyone that watch it, the small audience of people that watch my videos. I just want you to have a lot of great, unhealthy, delicious food in your future or in your past. I know I have it in my past, and I feel like I can't even breathe. I'm so full. But anyway, as you can see, I got a new haircut. I really haven't made a video in a while, but I'm kind of ready to start up again. Now, I'm going to be reviewing the movie 2012, and I'm going to start off with the good points, so let's just kind of jump right into it. The first good point that I have about that movie are the effects. The effects are splendid. They're unimaginably great. They're extremely believable. They're probably some of the best effects I've ever seen. I do think that the camera work was a little weird, though, at points, because you have these... At certain points, you have, like, these extremely cinematic, like, explosions, like, cracks of the core ripping through Los Angeles, and all these cars falling, and people panicking, and there's a point where the plane flies by a building, and there are hundreds of people, like, hanging out of the building, and there's a very large death toll in the movie, but those effects are great. And then when you have the scenes with, like, the guy talks to his wife, it looks like it was filmed on a home camera. Like, it looks like it was filmed on, like, a tiny little Sony camera or something. And I just think that it was a huge gap between the effects and the points where the actors were actually talking. Now, the second good point of the movie was the entertainment. It was an extremely entertaining movie. Well, let me kind of rephrase that. It's very entertaining the first 2 hours of the movie. The next 45 minutes are extremely tedious. Like, that's one of my bad points, so I'll get into that later, but let me just say there are certain points that I just wish would end of that movie. The third good point, and this is the last one, is the acting. I did not think the acting was that bad, and this is in opposition to a lot of the other critics. For example, I think maybe Michael Phillips of the Chicago Tribune. I don't really know. I just watched this video, and that's the only critic that comes to mind. So I'm not saying that he thinks that the acting was bad. I'm just saying that a lot of critics thought the acting was really bad. But I did not. I thought the acting was actually pretty good. Now on to the bad parts. The first bad thing that I really want to talk about, and this is the main bad point of the movie, is the length. This was a movie that could have been easily shot in under 2 hours, and I believe that that's already been said by a couple people. There are some scenes in the movie that I just wish would not have been in there. Like, there's a scene with the plane and them flying to China, or whatever. They're flying to China because there's Nepal or something, some weird place. Like, they say they have to go to China, but it's in Nepal, and I believe those are two different countries, because I know Mount Everest is not in China, and they say that Mount Everest is in China. I don't know. That's another one of the bad points that I'm going to talk about later. But the length was just tedious. The most tedious movie I've ever seen. There's a point where they're flying in the plane, and they could have made that scene 15 minutes long, but it's like 35 minutes long. And it just really made me angry, because you're just sitting there in that chair, and on top of that, when I was in the theater, the film got scrambled, so we had to sit there for an extra 5 minutes while we waited, and it was in the middle of the airplane scene, so it just kind of added even more time, but the airplane scene just took forever. And if they took that scene out, if they took, like, if they took half of the introduction out, the introduction lasts for like 35 minutes, and they could have condensed it to like 10 minutes, but the introduction is like 20 freaking minutes long. They could have really done a better job condensing this movie, and that is one of the major bad points. The next bad point I want to talk about is the kind of plausibility and realism of this whole movie. There are certain scenes that are so unrealistic, it just made me angry. Like, I know that the whole world ripping apart, that's not really a plausible concept, but there's a scene where he drives a Bentley out of the airplane and lands, and then the airplane drives off a cliff and explodes, and then, like, they're diving out, and it's in the middle of the Himalayas. They would not be able to suffice with, like, a t-shirt and a hoodie on. It would be so much colder. It would be so much colder than that. Also, the next bad point is the story. The story was kind of stupid. Like, the way the world and barely even makes sense. Like, they say that a solar flare heats up the water or something, or like the core of the earth, and then it gets hotter and it melts everything except the crust, which doesn't really make any sense at all, because I don't understand why it would not melt the crust, but apparently it doesn't melt the crust. The crust just floats on top of this enormous mass of, like, lava and magma and melted rock, and it just makes no sense at all. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of the movie. Here's the whole plot summed up. Guy goes and gets his children, goes camping, meets a hippie that says the world's gonna end, go home, puts his children up, the world starts ripping apart. He flies a plane around for about 2.5 hours. He gets to China, which isn't even China, finds boats, gets on, and that's the end of the movie. And you have to go to and they go to Africa, because the crust has, like, rearranged itself. It doesn't make any sense at all, the movie. Like, it's just an unrealistic, it's sickeningly unrealistic, the whole plot and everything. It just, and you're sitting there, and the length, this movie could have actually been passably good, because if you condensed it a little bit, then, and you just got entertained, then this movie would have been good. But since you literally have to sit there and watch for basically 3 hours, the runtime is 2 hours and 45 minutes. So it's basically 3 hours you have to sit in a chair and watch a movie. And the first hour and 30 minutes are mind-boggling. The effects are great and it's really cool. But then once you see how stupid everything really is, once your mind kind of wears off the numbing explosions, then you kind of understand how stupid the movie really is. Then the next thing that I want to talk about is the acting, which I said the acting was a good point, but it's also a bad point. I've never really been a fan of John Cusack, or however you pronounce his name, but he's just not a good actor in this movie at all. He's like, when the world ends, and when the government says that there's nothing to worry about, that's when you run! He never seems like he opens his eyes past the size of my thumb. Like, he never opens his eyes larger than this. Even when he's saving the boats to save, like, 400,000 people, he doesn't open his eyes wide enough. And it just really doesn't make very much sense. The last thing that I really want to talk about is do not go see this movie if you're bored easily, because the length kills it. Kills it. I mean, you're just sitting in this theater, and right when you think it should be over, you realize you still have another hour and a half left to watch. And I've always been a big fan of movies. A movie that really did its length well was Casino. I love Casino. Casino's one of my favorite movies. And then, what else? Casino, Goodfellas. Those are two mafia movies, which are very different than the End of the World movies, but they both do their length very well. 2012 just really did not do it. And that's why I would give it a 1.5 to 2 stars. So I do not recommend seeing this movie. So, thank you, and have a happy Thanksgiving. Let's end on a happy note and say Happy Thanksgiving.